Okay, this is my installation of a VFD to drive my three-phase Powermatic 65 table saw. As you can see, I've got it pre-programmed to 60 hertz for a frequency. One thing to note, the instructions on this one said connect the 220 volts to the R and T terminals. In fact, I had to connect it to the R and S terminals, so I imagine it was a typo in the manual. This basically will support up to a 5 horsepower 220 volt three-phase appliance, 15 amps, and as you can see, I've got a 220 volt circuit here. I'm going to unplug that here so you can see it. I put in that 20 amp 220 volt, which feeds the VFD. The VFD then feeds basically a 220 volt 4-prong connector for my L1, L2, L3, and ground. Okay. And then I run that over as an extension cord to my Powermatic saw, wired into this magnetic starter, motor starter. They say that it doesn't do well with magnetic motor starters, but that's only if you want to start it with the switch, which I don't. I start it from the VFD, and then I'll use the switch to turn it off after I'm finished cutting. This saw, when they had moved it, they obviously had disassembled it because, as you can see, there's a little bit of wobble here because things weren't completely tightened down. It's not going to affect the operation of the saw at this point because obviously the motor is connected to everything, so it's everything in relation is stationary. The worm gears work, but they're a little stiff, so obviously I want to get everything cleaned up, re-lubricated. And I haven't determined yet if I'm going to just clean the cabinet or go through a full psychotic repaint like a lot of people do. It'd be fun, it'd be great, it'd be a talking piece for sure. I just don't know if I can find around to it yet, but if I can get around to it, then maybe I will. Here's the tabletop. I already have it dismantled, and I've got the fence, the original fence for it. The interesting thing about this particular saw was this was purchased at an auction at the local high school in the town where I grew up in the high school where I took shop class. So the likelihood of this being one of the saws that I actually used when I was in high school over 30 years ago, actually 34 years ago, is highly likely because they only had 2 table saws in the shop class and I've used both of them. So I imagine this is going to be one of them. So anyways, I'm going to start up the VFD so you can see it operational. I'm going to make sure that my start button is pushed so the frequency drive can spin it up. I just walk over, and I have this set to a 5-second spin up, and you can do that through programming. And I just hit the run button. And as you can see, there's the saw in operation, and I can now use the switch, power it off, and you can't repower it on using the switch because you need the frequency drive, variable frequency drive, to actually spin up the motor. The whole issue with these 3-phase motors is they take a lot of load to start them. So as a result of that, on 3-phase power, the variable frequency drive has to spin it up through the frequency cycle. So we just go ahead and hit run stop here. As you can see, that's winding down the frequency. Again, I have that set to 5-second wind down deceleration as well. I'm going to just remove it from the 220 volt circuit. And now I'm going to just unplug my saw. As you can see, there's the connector I used, and there you have it. There's my new Powermatic saw, and it's ready for the rebuild. All right, looking forward to any tips and suggestions you guys might have if you've done this saw before. I know a lot of the parts are interchangeable with the 66, so if I do need something, like for instance, I know I'm going to need a knob here, but for the micro adjustment on the fence, but I've got the broken one, and I'm sure those are pretty common to get, so that's not going to be a problem. The shims seem to be welded on for the tabletop, so as long as I put it back on the way it came on, it should be no problem. Anyways, wish me luck. All right, thanks a lot.